მინდა გაცნობოთ, რომ ჩვენმა კომპანიამ დანერგა ასე ვთქვათ Sweeft Talk-ი, Sweeft Talks ესე ერქმევა, აუცილებლად და სავარაუდოდ აიტვირთება. Რომ იცოდეთ, მაინც რეკორდინგი დაწყებული არის და ვიწერთ ყველაფერს, რაც თლიანი ტრენინგის, მიტინგის განმავლობაში გაჟღერდება, ასე ვთქვათ. რაც შეეხება დღევანდელ პირველ workshops, ჩვენ workshop ჩაატარებენ Eifion და Shota. Eifion არის ბრიტანელი UX UI დიზაინერი, რომელიც არის ჩვენი ჰედი დიზაინის მიმართულებით. Eifion-ს აქვს ნამუშევარი 1000-ობით აპლიკაციაზე, შექმნილი აქვს ევროპის მასშტაბით. ძალიან ბევრ პროექტზე აქვს ნამუშევარი და არის თავისი საქმის უმაღლესი პროფესია Sweeft Talk-ი, Sweeft Talks ესე ერქმევა. პირველი არის Eifion, რომელიც გაუძღვება workshops, თუმცა აუცილებლად შემდეგ ეტაპზე გავაგრძელებთ და გვეყოლება სხვადასხვა მიმართულების პროფესიონალები, რომლებიც გაგიზიარებენ თავიანთ გამოცდილებას. Ამასთან ერთად აუცილებლად ისაუბრებენ ძალიან საინტერესო თემებზე, როგორიც არის თუნდაც როგორ უნდა დავიწყოთ მუშაობა, როგორ უნდა მოვხდეთ ისეთ კომპანიაში, როგორიც არის Sweeft Digital და რა კომპეტენციები არის საჭირო იმისთვის, რომ გახდეთ ჩვენი თანამშრომელი. ჩაატარებენ Eifion და Shota. Eifion არის ბრიტანელი UX UI დიზაინერი, რომელიც არის ჩვენი ჰედი დიზაინის მიმართულებით. Eifion-ს აქვს ნამუშევარი 1000-ობით აპლიკაციაზე, შექმნილი აქვს ევროპის მასშტაბით. ძალიან ბევრ პროექტზე აქვს ნამუშევარი და არის თავისი საქმის უმაღლესი პროფესია.
Thanks a lot for joining us. So, as Keto said, I'm the lead UI UX designer at Sweeft Digital, where my role is to motivate and inspire our team to create user-centric products. A little bit about myself. After graduating university, I was working in graphic design for several years, where I created brand identities, typography, and illustrations. What I liked mostly about the branding was thinking about the end user. So during this process, there are so many things to consider in terms of from materials to fonts, symbologies to color. So unlike fine art with graphic design, there is objective. So you have a problem to solve. If you think about like an airport or something, you should not interpret the signs. It has its job, and the same can apply then to UX. So this transition for me to UI UX was really good because of this problem-solving kind of factor. My experience goes from designing Snapchat filters in UK to digital wallets in Italy, e-commerce platforms in Georgia, and even augmented reality platform for a Russian pop star, which was a bit weird to be honest, but I won't go into that. So in this talk, I wanted to focus more on processes and some points that can help anybody who's looking at developing in UI UX, as it affects so much of digital aspects. And I didn't want to show this kind of just to show you the XD or the tools, because there's a lot of videos for that. So I will pass you now to Shota, who is our junior designer. He was a former intern, so I think he will bring some good perspective to the talk, because he also knows this process from start to finish. So let's start with Shota, and then we'll go a deep dive into UX, design thinking, and some workflows that's going to help you to design better. Over to you, Shota.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, I'm Shota. I'm now junior UI UX designer at Sweeft. Nice to meet you at Sweeft Talks. So I will share my experience working in Sweeft Digital. So I started 1 year ago about. Before this, I was working. I was some freelance. I was making freelance works about branding also in graphic design. So then I decided to go in UI UX, and the first job for me it was Sweeft, and Eifion gave me big knowledge here. So for example, the best for me and the best experience was after I started work as an intern in Sweeft. Um, the workshops from Eifion was very good for my works, and the best practice was when I started independently working on e-commerce app, which you see on screens now. The biggest practice for me was this at the start. The experience working with a client, working with developer guys, team, and also with analytics. So everything this helped me to improve my skills, improve my UI UX design skills also. This was the main aspects for my working. So someone asked here in the chat that was this my first project as a Sweeft. As I remember, these screens from e-commerce app was my first independent work in Sweeft. So other stuff about UI UX, I think you will continue. Eifion?
We can't hear your voice. Ave, we can't hear your voice. You're muted. Now try to unmute. Now try to unmute, please.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get into UI UX. For me, this is the best demonstration is these two bottles here. The first one is obviously UI, right? Because we have this iconic bottle of the ketchup. Let's pretend that it's Tremale for Georgian's sake, but this is really visually appealing. It's in this classic legendary bottle. And this is UI basically, how it looks to the user. The only thing is that it also has its own problems and flaws, because obviously when you're trying to use it, you're trying to get this ketchup out, it's not a comfortable experience. I literally remember the first time I saw this bottle on the right, the squeegee bottle on the shelf, and I remember thinking that like Heinz literally changed the game, because it was completely different. When you're squeezing this bottle, it's like my French fries didn't know what hit them. It was like completely different interactions rather than using this knife or hitting the bottle. So this is like, for me, fundamentals of UI versus UX. The main differences we can say is the user interface is basically how it looks, the visual side of things. So this can be things like the layouts. So we're talking about visual design here, the icons, the colors that are being used, and it must be visually pleasing for the user. So it should be attractive. This is the general thing that the interface should be. Mostly these UI designers are working with developers. So at the handover stage, they are passing the information to developers so they can obviously put into practice whatever we've designed. And by contrast, the user experience is the interactions, how it's actually laid out and organized. And instead of things like colors, we're looking at wireframes and prototypes. The biggest thing here, I would say, is on the left, we've got that it's visually pleasing, and on the right here, it's a pleasure to use. So the experience is really oriented around how it feels. These are the two main kind of differentiators. The same can be said about brand and identity. Often these two things are put in the same category. So marketers or what a client will often ask you to create a brand identity, but they are also two different things. So on the left side here, we've got the identity, which is again how it looks. So these are things like the logo, the mark, or the slogan. or things that you can identify the brand with. So if we would think about a can of Coke, this is like, you obviously identify it by the color, the shape of the bottle, and so on. But the brand is what actually Coke stands for, which is happiness or refreshment or something. So again, this is how it looks, and the brand is how it feels. So we can think about the vision, the value, and kind of the idea behind it. It's all about the emotions you get and what you feel when you're using this. If we take another example, there is UI, UX, and also EX. EX is employee experience. The reason I wanted to mention this as one example is because user experience applies to pretty much everything, not only websites and apps. So it can be something from the chair or the product. If any of you have ever bought something in Gorgia, for example, it's like hell. There is 3 different checkouts. You must go to each form. You must like give all your personal details just to buy some cement. So this is like part of the experience, buying experience. And it's of course affecting sales. So with employee experience, this has a very good parallel because when you're joining a company, there is this onboarding process. There is the user journey from finding the job posted online to the interview process, again, onboarding. There is a retention of the staff, which obviously business, it's customer retention. And then there's also how you feel when you're leaving the company. So this is like aftermarket care, let's say. So it's a very good parallel between the two things. It's also really like evolving industry because companies are thinking about how their employees are actually experiencing the workplace. I think a lot of designers will probably move to this industry. And another thing that's interesting is that this obviously relates to human resources. And one of the fundamentals for human resources is that you should be empathetic. So you should be able to understand your employees and be able to support them and encourage them and so on. So in HR, it's very important to be empathetic, but equally, it's important in design and especially user experience that you're empathetic towards your users. So you understand them so that you can build better products for them. So here's a few just little stats about this that obviously the companies that actively sort of working on this employee experience are much more successful in terms of Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Forbes list, and etc. Also 4 times as profitable, but that could be that the more profitable they are, the more resources they have. But let's just leave it at that. So moving on, speaking about experience and employees. So there is this question of how you can get hired if you do not have any experience at all. And the first thing that stands out for me is your CV. If you're a designer and you're sending a CV which is created on Word or something of the sorts, it's already sending like a really bad signal to your HR and obviously the designer that's going to be checking your work. So if you're claiming to be a designer, first thing you need to design is your CV to show what you can do. As a designer, I'll be looking more at your design of your CV rather than the actual content, to be honest. It says like a lot about you. The second thing is that you need to start. It doesn't matter if you don't have clients or if you do not have like lots of experience. The important thing is to just start and be intentional with your work. And what I mean by be intentional is you should aim to reveal your process. Process means that you can obviously on Dribble and Behance, there are a lot of landing pages, things that look quite nice, but there is no context to what was your approach or what's the problem you're trying to solve. So it's more about that you can create something that looks cute, but what's actually the value there. So it's important if you're trying to get hired to show this process. And speaking of the process, we can start with a BRD. So BRD is the business requirement document. This is basically the backbones of everything that we're doing in the software company. You are getting two scenarios. So either the client will have a ready-made BRD, and they have some either low-level requirements or high-level requirements, which could be like we need a 5-page website. On the website will be a homepage, gallery, and contact, and so on. And high-level will obviously be more detailed, where they're saying each and every function. In this scenario, the designer and the analytics team will obviously review this document and give their feedback. The second scenario will be if there is no BRD, in which case the analytics team are going to start working on this. Basically, these guys are the designer's best friends. We are working super close with them in order to create better products. Of course, the business analyst is thinking from technical side, they are thinking about business, and the user UI and UX designers are going to be looking from the user's perspective. So often what happens is, at least at Sweeft, we are making these in collaboration with each other. So that means that we're reviewing the features, giving feedbacks, creating wireframes, and this kind of thing where we're giving the feedback from user perspective. Now, if we look how this actually looks, the process, this is the classic design thinking process. More often than not, a lot of designers, especially young designers, are starting either in the middle here at creating ideas, or maybe even jumping straight to prototype. I know that I've also been there and thought that I knew everything and just jumped straight to XD and started designing. But what we can do in order to create much better products is follow this process fully. So right now we're looking at a linear process, which is starting from empathy. So we need to understand our user as best we can in order to deliver a better product. Golden rule is basically, we are designers, we are not the users. Even if you use the product yourself, still you're a designer. You're gonna have your own preferences, your own bias, and so on. So it's really important to do your homework and get this understanding about your users. Second part would be to define. So here you're going to be pointing out what you've actually found by understanding your users. This could be problems that they've encountered, or something which is like a pain point, or objectives that you need to reach. After that, you're going to start working on your ideas, you're going to create prototypes, and then test. So this is the linear way, but the non-linear would be to jump from one to the other. So once we get to the stage of ideation and prototyping, this is like where it gets exciting. So when you create prototypes, you're going to lead these to new ideas. So it's by creating low resolution wireframes. So not trying to create a finished article on day one, but rather try to make like very easy and lightweight prototypes. It means that you're going to experiment more. It's going to mean that you're going to discover new possibilities, which will lead you to new ideas. The same thing is going to happen when you test it. So when you're testing, your users are going to reveal new also perspectives, and not only perspectives, but also new definitions, because there will be things that you missed as one person. We are just one or two people, and of course, you cannot foresee every possible scenario. Excuse me. So this is like the non-linear way, and it's giving us much deeper and broader insight into the product creation. If we break these down a little bit and give some examples now. So the way to gain empathy with your user is by creating interviews, by shadowing them, which means to watch them using the product itself. You should be seeking to understand exactly, excuse me, exactly what their objectives are, and you should be non-judgmental. So it means you should not have a predefined outlook on the product itself. You should not already decide what the user wants. Let them tell you what they want. An example of this, this was one product we made at Sweeft. It was a nutrition and fitness app. So when I was designing this, I realized that the users are probably going to be using this either in the gym or whilst cooking. So that means they're going to be holding the phone probably in one hand, or you cannot see my phone, but okay, they're going to be holding the phone in one hand and maybe cooking on the other, or if not cooking, maybe they're in the gym or something. So what I aimed to do was make the primary buttons within thumb's reach. So it means you can use the app just with one thumb rather than being like 2 fingers and burning your food or something like this. Another example here. So in definition, we've got user-centric problem statements. So this means you're making clear definitions of problems that the user may or may not encounter. The same thing with pain points. So these are like, you can look at existing platforms and what is the problems that are existing there, and the challenges and so on that the user may face. So here you're kind of getting to know them and defining with, by using user stories, is a great way to kind of plan and set its objectives. So this means you're creating just like it says, a little mini story where I want to, for example, I want to mark my recipe as complete whilst using one hand. So it's very specific, but you get the idea. An example of this on the same project, when we took this project to web, we had this kind of recipes playing. I'm losing my voice. We had these recipes playing, and when the video was playing, obviously the recipe is giving the instructions and what you should do. One of the common problems with the cooking recipes is that they go quite quickly. So, you know, the chefs will be telling you to add some cardamom and cinnamon, 2 scoops of this sort of thing. And the user is kind of like, slow down, Gordon, I don't know what the hell you just said. So it means that underneath, when you scroll down here, you're going to see the steps and the ingredients. But the problem there is that now you can't see the video anymore. So what, God, man, what is this literally done? 1 second. I spend all my day designing rather than talking, that's why my voice is gone. So here we've got a little mini player that pops up so that the users are able to check the ingredients or the steps, whilst also still following along with the video. Another idea we had here was that during the video is playing, maybe there would be some like little notices on the video itself that showed the ingredients or something like this, but it was a bit more difficult with execution, so we went with this little mini player when you start to scroll down. Okay, next one is ideate. So here you really need to kind of be free, have some fun, and you kind of should consider all possibilities. There is no reason that you should be defined to one idea, and you can brainstorm all you like. Also, another way is to build on existing concepts. So of course you can research, download apps, install, see what the existing market is doing, and then build upon that. And at this stage, you should try to, again, reserve your judgment. And don't be afraid to use pen and paper rather than jumping straight to XD. So again, going back to this project, one of the proposals was completely different. It was like all black, quite heavy. The layout was like very masculine and heavy, black and white, classic. But the finished article was quite different in the end. It was much more lighter. The focus was on the food and content, and it came out very different to the first proposal. Okay, regarding prototypes, as I mentioned earlier, you want to be focusing on low resolution wireframes. It's very tempting to start your design with whatever idea you had and jump straight to the high level wireframes. But the most fruitful way is to try to make lots of little wireframes, simple ones, explore different possibilities, and kind of as a rule, if you're spending a couple of days on these, probably you're making something too high level. And if you want to be more sort of experimental and test different possibilities, these little wireframes should only take you a couple of hours. There are tools like Marvel, Balsamic, Draw.io, and so on that you can use to rapidly create these low resolution wireframes. Even pen and paper is fine as well. You can just get your idea on pen and paper, take a photo and put it onto XD or something to prototype later. Regarding testing, so the testing will probably reveal the most in the process. This is going to give you the real life sort of feedback from users and give you much greater insight. This whole process can be repeated, not indefinitely, but as much as your budget will allow. So once you get into this stage, obviously you can pretty much start again. So you can go again through empathizing, redefining, creating new ideas, prototyping and testing, and repeat until you get a product that you're really satisfied with. This is obviously the best case scenario, but it's not always like that. But there are ways in which you can still reach some interesting insights, even if you don't have, for example, a research team or a testing team or quality assurance or whatever. So one of the ways we can do that is by guerrilla testing. This is from Nielsen and Norman. They created this kind of guerrilla testing concept where from just 5 people, you can reveal around 85% of the problems in your application or web or so on. So how does this actually work? You want to start with a prototype, probably not the whole application, because if you're going to ask somebody to test that, it's going to be quite difficult to get all of the feedbacks, and it's also a lot to ask somebody depending on the size. So you can make either smaller prototypes, or you can specify what actually the user should be testing. Next thing you need to do is devise your plan, which means you should decide what should be tested and how it will be measured. So the success and fail rate of specific areas. So it means, was the user able to execute the specific task? Then you need to find somebody to do the testing. There are pretty much two types of people that you would like for this. The first would be if you're working with a client and they have, for example, a sales team, marketers, they're quite good because they're going to give you insight about the customer. Maybe they can say that this feature is more important to our customers, or they can give you some insights which you may have missed, which will be backed by their experience. But on the other hand, they're still going to be a little bit biased because they already know the product. Best thing you can do is find people who do not know the product, because once you've been designing something, you already develop some bias and you think that everyone understands it as well as you or your colleagues. So the best people you can find is just your friends, or in a cafe, for example. There's also, you can try this method in a cafe. You can offer some tea or coffee and in exchange for testing product. So next up, once you found somebody, you're going to explain the process to them. The main thing that they need to do is to think aloud. So when they're going through the app, they should be saying things like, this button is a bit small, or that took a bit too long to load, or some kind of like live commentary, so that you're able to collect this feedback rather than just watching them struggle. If they're not too open, you can ask them open-ended questions. So instead of do you like the app, which is obviously just yes or no, you can ask these open-ended questions, which is going to give you again more insight or about the behavior and goals. And the last thing you need to do there is to document. So if you're doing it in person, you can create a spreadsheet with your objectives and then write the comments as they are explaining to you. Or if you're doing it online, you could obviously record the experience. So speaking about this testing and type of working styles, something that we see a lot with new designers, and when people are posting the work on Behance and Dribble and so on, is that it looks cute, but does it actually work? So they're thinking from probably the UI point of view, they're making nice layouts or some cool stock images and so on, but they're missing some of the real life situations. So for example, in registration processes, there is a thing called the keyboard in real life, which people are often forgetting about. So obviously this keyboard is going to move up. What's going to happen to the space here? Is the button still going to be visible? Is it going to be scrollable or not? Obviously, again, on different devices, this button might be overlapping the text fields. So it's important to think about the real life situations when you're designing. Again, if you're trying to get hired, it's very cool to show these deeper thought than just the surface value. Same thing with things like error messages. Is there actually room for this? Have you considered, these spaces for that?
Yeah.
Also, hello, Nino. Can you mute your microphone, please? Thank you. So here we've got a little slider on the right side here. So it looks kind of okay, but in reality, we need to think about in what increments will this slider move? Will it go in ones? So it will be 1 Larry at a time, 5 Larry, 10 Larry, or what? What will be like how it will feel when it slides? Is the end point just max? Is it going to 1 million? Is it going to 1,000? Do we need to think about what's the most expensive product in the inventory or what? So it's very easy to design this little slider thing, but there is much more going on in reality. And we have to be aware of this when thinking of good UX. Same thing is happening in things like searches. It's pretty easy just to slip in some little search field, but in reality, there is much more going on. So will you have a new page when it opens? Will the keyboard be already up? Will there be a live search? If it's a live search, then how do I see all the results? Is it only the ones which are displayed here on the screen, or am I going to see everything if I want to? And is it going to be animated or so on? So there's a lot more kind of levels here than simply just adding an icon. The cost of this actually, when we're not considering the impact of bad UX, can be huge. For example, Marks and Spencer's, they redesigned their website. It looked really nice. It was clean, minimal, and nicely laid out. But the problem was that people needed to create new accounts. They could not reset their password and they could not log in properly. So for this 150 million pound website, Marks and Spencer lost an additional 55 million. In Bank of America, they conducted a huge research to find out why they were struggling to keep up with their competitors. And it was revealed that almost half of the users was actually abandoning the registration flow. Registration flow is obviously a huge pain in the ass for users. They are always going through the same process, and it's really annoying for them. So if it's difficult, simply you're just not going to install the app. And similarly, Walmart conducted a test as well regarding the loading speed of their website, and they discovered that from just 1 second improvement on loading speed was increasing their return on investment of almost 2%, plus 2%, which is obviously millions of dollars in return. So the cost is huge. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Again, I wanted to avoid this just showing you one of the programs and how cool I am. So invite any questions now. I don't know if anyone's written anything in the chat. It looks like they have.
Sweeft რაიმე შეკითხვა დასვით და შეგიძლიათ ჩართოთ unmuted.
Okay, Shota, did you check the questions? Did anything stand out for you?
შეკითხვები მოიწერეს და გავიაროთ ჯერ ეგ და let's start from the comments that wrote in the comment field and then we can have some interaction and ask with unmuting. So let's start. Shota, here are some questions.
Yeah, I saw them. So first question was from Henri, but it was with UA about product designing, working methodology.
May I introduce myself? So currently I'm working as a UI UX designer and I'm tasked to redesign the web page. So I was very interested in the steps. What steps should I proceed and follow in order to redesign? So basically, it would be highly appreciated if you just can highlight for me as a advice, what steps should I keep going. I think the best way will be to start with usability testing of the current web page that we have right now, solicit feedback, and afterwards move to redesign process generally, like starting with empathy, go to define, ideate, and so forth.
Absolutely. I think you hit already the nail on the head. Usability testing is awesome if you can do this. Depending on what platform you have, there are lots of tools ranging from prices, whether it's simply Google Analytics to check where people are losing engagement on the website, or where they're spending more time, or where they're exiting, or you can use more advanced tools like Hotjar and so on.
One question regarding the tools. This is also a very interesting thing. As long as I work for the Figma, because I think currently Figma is the best tool. I'm not speaking about the iOS or Mac system, because Sketch is also a great tool. What usability testing tools would you recommend? Basically, a couple of days ago, I just explored Maze, maze.co. This is very interesting usability testing tool. This is French startup. And maybe if you can share with us also with usability testing tools that currently you use during your working processes. So Hotjar, Maze, Loop 11 is also a great tool, and Google Analytics like the foundation of usability testing.
Yeah, Maze is a great place to start. I think it's giving quite good insights. Hotjar is much more expensive, I think. So Maze would be probably the go-to one. We're also using this. You can also conduct your own tests here on this site by deploying different sort of landings, or with some A/B testing to compare what's the feedback there. So you can see what's actually the user is telling you when you're making this A/B testing. It's like the best way you can do that. But yeah, I think you seem to be already on the right path with Maze. It's a really good tool. What was you said? What the next part of your question was regarding the steps you should take for this redesign. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are you working alone in this project, or you have like a big team, or is there a couple?
Yeah, we have agile working methodology. I started 1 month ago, and currently I'm responsible of all kind of designing processes, starting from research, ended by high fidelity mockups and retesting the product before launching, and as well as after launching. So I wanted just to make sure do I am proceeding the correct path of designing. So
yeah. Definitely the first place you want to start is to try to understand your user. If I'm not sure what kind of website it is, but if you're able to actually directly communicate with any of them, it will also give you some insights. Maybe if not, you can talk to sales team.
Yeah.
They're going to give you also some feedback there to get the user's perspective over the business perspective. business is normally oriented on their bank account and of course not on the user itself. But if you pay enough attention to the user, of course, this guy's bank account is going to increase in any case. So this design thinking flow will definitely help you there. First is understanding, then you need to define the problems with existing site. You mentioned already with the steps of usability testing. You can, depending on budget, either you're going to test yourself, you're going to get 5 of your friends, for example, just to test, ask them to complete some tasks, whether that's like a checkout flow, just add something to your basket, or if it's navigate to a certain part or create account. So create this objective for them. So define the objective and then monitor how they're actually executing. That will going to give you the pain points and give you like the idea where you should be focusing the redesign. So of course, it's not just how it looks, but how it's going to function for them. Then you can start playing around with your wireframes. Again, like I said, try not to be too precious. Just make the simple ones, share them with your agile team, get the guys involved, ask the developers, speak to your business guys, get the feedback, and kind of keep this collaborative process at this stage. Then once you're comfortable, you can start working on high fidelities then.
And as a general rule, what kind of methodology do you proceed during product development? I mean, testings. Like I follow Google methodology. I test on low fidelity, then I conduct a high fidelity test, and then once again, after revision of high fidelity tests, I also do one more test after launching.
Yeah. So
three.
Yeah, the low fidelity is going to give you the general feedback on kind of logic and the layout. And then as you add higher levels, this is going to give you more feedback on the higher level sort of interactions. So the low level is giving you more insight on like this basic logic. So let's say the architecture and how it's kind of laid out. And the more you design, the more it's going to kind of details are going to go then, whether or not the button is in the right place or whatever.
Thank you very much for a kind explanation.
Thanks, man. Thanks for a great question. And it sounds like you're in a good path, man. Good luck.
მადლობა ანრი.
არაფერს.
ხომ არ გაქვთ კიდე შეკითხვები? დარწმუნებული ვარ, რომ გექნებათ.
There was also one question from Kolos Javashvili. So he asked, shouldn't you first of all collect the information about the product you have to create a design for? You talked about it, about analytics team, yes, Abe. So I think UX team, UX and analytics team gathering this information together about product from the business, and then starting working about wireframes or something.
Yeah, that's kind of why I mentioned that the business analysts are your best friends, because they are collecting this data. Also, the product owner as well. They are collecting this information for the from the client, so they're getting like the either low level or high level requirements. This is can be in the form of just what they want to achieve, or also on the research level of what the company is, what they do, and so on. If you mean, is Nicholas here actually? She's still there. Yeah, he's here.
Nicholas, ამოიღე ხმა. დაგველაპარაკე.
No worries.
გამარჯობა.
You can collect this information, and that's also insight. Then you're going to move on to the user. So this design thinking, it's obviously once you've already spoken to your analytics team and got the general idea. Also, it depends if you have UX researcher, or if you have any research team, or there is a marketing research also conducted. It depends on that. The more information you have, of course, it's better. Once you've got this idea, then that's when you're going to move to this design thinking process where you're starting to think about the user. And what was the next question there? What is the necessary questions you have to ask during the interview? So the interview will depend obviously on the product, but it's definitely a good idea to have this written down and a plan so that you're not just you know, asking random questions. So the kind of questions you want to ask, I think you're talking about this empathy stage. It's you want to get the understanding, so you want to understand from them what actually they want to do, how they're going to be doing it, where they're going to be. Like if you're ordering a taxi, for example, it means you're going to be probably outside, you might be in the rain. It's like there's factors that exist beyond just simply ordering a cab, right? So you need to go as deep as you can into the user, which is why they're creating these user stories and user personas. So kind of you need to think about them from the first point and then build your questions around that. That's gonna probably give you the best advice. You can probably also find examples online. You mentioned here about a script, so you can probably search for some examples. I'm sure there's a lot. So I think that hopefully answers your question. What's this one? Anna's asking, following up on the ketchup example we started with, the perfect UI UX combo is that, I guess. Yeah, I think so too. Ketchup is tasty and that bottle is cool. Okay, what else we got? Let's get in same order. Maze, Arco, you writing things? Yes, I'm here. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions. Are there any more? Anybody else like to ask anything? Please do so. Don't be shy.
მეგობრებო, შეკითხვებზე გელოდებით. არ გაქვთ არავის?
One question. I'm very much interested in what product are you working currently on and what phase are you just keeping?
What product am I working on now?
Yeah.
Right now, I cannot say too much, but what I can say is we're working on the mobile payment application. So in Georgia, soon there will be open banking, and we're aiming to make a product which will be built around this.
Digital wallet, yeah?
Yeah, this is a digital wallet. And we are now we pretty much finished the design stage and starting with the development now. So this project was quite tough. It changed a lot. We had a lot of different requirements because it's our own product and we was having a very flexible approach to this, meaning that we changed a lot, and this was basically because of thinking about the user. So in the beginning, we had a lot of features, like too many, and we stripped everything back, redefined the features, redefined the objectives, thought about what actually the customer needed, and we removed a lot of stuff. So we started, I think, with like 5 tab menus. There was 5 different navigation points at the bottom with a huge amount of features. And by the end, we finished just with 3 at the bottom, and it's much more streamlined. That's because we followed this flow of redefining, testing, and so on. So we went through the prototypes and we stripped back everything, which was quite good because the starting point is completely different to whatever we're going to put into development now.
And when you are working on this project, you use single competencies like UX researcher, UX writer, strategist, or UI UX designer does everything?
Well, it depends. Although we are a big team here, there is also availability on the market for the UX researchers and UX writers, copywriters, and so forth. So some of this work, it's kind of on the UI UX designer. I'm also writing a lot because I barely speak English. And in terms of research, this is distributed between analytics team and also from UI UX point of view as well. Also, product owners, when we're in agile method, they're also conducting their research. They're looking deeper into the product as well. So it's a bit spread out at the moment, but I'm sure that's gonna change in the near future, especially in Georgia. I think there are going to be much more defined roles in research and especially in testing as well. I think testing is going to be like the most in demand, which I think it wasn't when I first came to Georgia. Certainly testing wasn't even part of the design process, nor research was like also not so much considered. It was more a case of check out the closest competitor, have they done recently, and let's make something similar or better. I think that's going to go like much higher level now. Okay, I think we've got a couple more questions here.
Hi, I'm Georgi, the head of marketing at Krokovec. Hi, we work a lot about UI and UX, and sometimes there's a big dilemma because when you are making better UX, sometimes the UI is getting worse or versus versa. So, for example, if you are making good resolution pictures on website, uploading the page load time is getting very high. So, where is which is more important, you think, and how you are deciding this dilemma? For I know that it's very good if you can make the both on high level, but sometimes it's kind of impossible. What we should do in this case, make better UX or UI, in your opinion?
Well, your customers will probably tell you which is the best. If you're gonna make changes and your customers or your betting is always gonna be decreased, you're gonna have instant feedback. The thing I would say is that sometimes in the big companies, when they're making huge changes, the general feedback is that the customer is not happy. If you look at even Instagram, for example, when they changed their branding and so on, everybody hated it. There was 1,000 articles in everybody. Journal was writing how much they hate this new logo. And fast forward a couple of years, of course, you cannot imagine Instagram in another way. So I think sometimes these changes, which are like very necessary for the business, you need to have like strong nerves in order to actually execute them, and on a longer time frame, maybe it will be bigger return. But on the like, if you're making these like changes and on the next day you're going to lose bets, for example, then of course you're going to get afraid and turn back. In terms of UI over UX, of course I'm going to say UX. UI is affecting the user experience. Like you said, if the images are too high quality, the loading time is going to be affected. I think the time is around 3 seconds before somebody will get tired and they will go to another company. So I think in your sphere, there is an expectation there for gambling, and you need to meet that expectation. So by going through this process of empathizing with your user, you're gonna understand what's better for them. It might be that UI or UX. So it comes back again to your particular users.
But it's too hard because if you are getting, for example, worst UX, you will see the next day in results. But if you have done worst UI, you will see it's a kind of long term. You will see after 3 months because it doesn't affect tomorrow. So after 3 months, maybe it will be very late. So I'm always afraid of it, but we are trying to make some researches, A/B testing and etc. different kinds of stuff, but we couldn't found a way. What's the margin of this? We are now deciding after all of these researches with some kind of our feelings, because the researches didn't gives you the good data about UI. UX it's very easy to measure because you are changing. The next day you can see how it has affected. But if you, for example, have the low quality images, it affects on your brand, and it needs some time to show was it good or bad.
Yeah, I understand the problem. So I think probably, as you said, over time you're going to reveal and collect more data. So the longer you are running these tests and the longer you are making these experiments, you're going to collect more data, and your data will be more dependable. So I cannot say which will be better for you to focus, because probably you are having better data than I can to make such subjective like statement.
Thanks, man, for your opinion.
Thank you, man. What else we got? Something about what skills and experience do you need in order to be able to compete on your first job? This basically, I would say for user experience especially, you don't need to be a great designer. You need to be a problem solver. You need to be a thinker. You need to be able to understand people and problems and be able to empathize with them. So it's not necessary for the first job to be the best designer. In UI, if that's the direction you want to go to, you can start learning on either Figma or XD. These are like lightweight, easy to pick up. There's lots of tutorials there. And if you're looking to go to UI UX, that's probably where I would start rather than Photoshop and Illustrator. I think, what's the next one? Which tools do you use for communicating and sharing your designs with developers? I use Zeppelin most of the time. So yeah, we're also using Zeppelin. Typically, we use Zeppelin for applications, and we're using XD sometimes for web. The reason being is that on Zeppelin, you can organize your pages in a more like comfortable way. So you can put them into sections on Zeppelin, but on XD, you're kind of seeing this overview. So for web, it's a little easier there, and there's less components really, typically anyway. And on the smaller projects, you can use XD. Zeppelin is higher level, I would say, and we're using that at Sweeft. Is there anything else? What we got? I think that's about it. Thanks everyone. If there's anything else, now's your time. If not, was really good speaking with you, and thanks for joining us. We'll be having other Sweeft Talks on the theme of developing, and also.
Hey, one more question from Nicholas.
That is a great question, Nicholas. And yes, indeed, we are looking for maybe 1, maximum 2 interns. Feel free to get in touch. I'm quite easy to find. The email is there at the bottom. But yeah, we are looking for interns. Also in other fields as well, we are hiring. We're rapidly growing now, so we're looking for paid internships. As Shota said, when you're working at Sweeft, you're involved in the projects. You will not just be, sitting on YouTube. You will have your own roles in projects. You'll be working with all parts of the team and getting this experience. So feel free to send your CVs, work, and so on. We'd be happy to have it.
No more questions? Should we finish?
I think we can wrap up here.
Thank you, Avi, very much for such an interesting and informative meeting. I hope we will meet again in Zoom with new topics. დიდი მადლობა თქვენ ყველას, რომ შემოგვიერთდით და მიიღეთ მონაწილეობა. ჩვენ ვაგრძელებთ Sweeft Talk-ების სერიებს, ასე ვთქვათ, ბევრი საინტერესო დეველოპერი და ბევრი საინტერესო მიმართულების, ასე ვთქვათ, თანამშრომელი ყავს, რომელსაც შეუძლიათ რომ გაგიზიაროთ თავიანთი გამოცდილება. თვალი ადევნეთ ჩვენს Facebook გვერდს, ჩვენს ვებსაიტს და აუცილებლად გავაგრძელებთ ძალიან საინტერესო workshop-ებს. დიდი მადლობა თქვენ, დიდი მადლობა შოთას და ეიფს. კი ბატონო.
ცოტა გვიან შემოგიერთი და კონცეპტზეც რო თქვა ორი სიტყვით რომ ეს Sweeft Talk-ის მუღამრე თქვენ თანამშრომლები იქნებიან მარტო თუ რაღაცა
კი ბატონო, პირველი workshop-ი არის, რომელიც ჩატარდა დღეს, თუმცა აუცილებლად გავაგრძელებთ. პირველ ეტაპზე იგეგმება ჩვენი თანამშრომლების მიერ ჩატარებული ტრეინინგების ასე ვთქვათ, ტრეინინგები. შემდეგ ეტაპზე სიამოვნებით მოვიწევთ სხვა კომპანიებიდან, ადამიანებს, რომლებიც გააზიარებენ თავიანთ გამოცდილებას და ისაუბრებენ თავიანთ კომპეტენციებზე.
ან მიზანი რა, ან ტრენინგ ცენტრს აყალიბებთ თუ ვერ გაგვთ უბრალოდ
workshop-ები გაგრძელდება. Knowledge sharing-ი არის რა უბრალოდ. რამეში თუ დაგეხმარება დღევანდელი workshop-ი, ძალიან გაგიხარდება.
კი, როგორ არის, საინტერესო იყო ძალიან. არა, უბრალოდ დღევანდელი workshop ძალიან კაი იყო, უბრალოდ თვითონ ამ პროექტის მიზანი მაინტერესებდა რა ის.
არაფერი, გარდა იმისა, რომ დამწყებ დიზაინერებს, UX UI მიმართულებით და უბრალოდ იმ ადამიანებს, რომლებსაც ინტერესი აქვთ, რომ ჩაერთონ და მოусმინონ მსგავსი მიმართულებით და მიიღონ და იყვნენ მეტად ინფორმატიულები, why not? მე მგონი კარგი
UI დიზაინზე ვაკეთებთ თუ ზოგადად ყველა სფეროზე?
არა, ჩვენ კომპანიაში სხვა მიმართულებზე გავაკეთებთ, ახლა დავიწყეთ დიზაინით. თუმცა გვეყოლება დეველოპერები და ძირითადად middle და senior level-ის დეველოპერები იქნებიან, რომლებიც ჩაატარებენ workshop-ებს. იქნება ეს iOS-ი, Android-ი, web-ი, back-ი, რა ვიცი, ყველა მიმართულებით. ჩვენ ალბათ სავარაუდოდ Facebook-იდან ნახეთ, ხო? Facebook-ზე ნახეთ event. თუ არა?
კი, Facebook-ზე ვნახე და ჩემ მეგობრებს ჰქონდათ თან ისა going-ი მიცემდა და დამაინტერესა მეც რა აქ სფეროში ვართ ასე თუ ძალიან მაგმართულები ძალიან აქტიურად მუშაობთ და გავი საინტერესო, აი, კარგი იქნება თუ კიდევ გააკეთებთ რა.
აუცილებლად გავაკეთებთ.
გადასარევი.
დიდი მადლობა მონაწილეობის მიღებისთვის. თუ აღარ გაქვთ არანაირი შეკითხვა, დაგემშვიდობებით.
Thanks guys. Bye.
რა უნდა გავაკეთო, ერთი შეკითხვა არის ბოდიში, რა უნდა გავაკეთო ინტერნეტ რომ მიმიყვანო. საბაზისო ცოდნა აუცილებლად უნდა გქონდეთ რაღაც მიმართულებით, იმ მიმართულებით რა მიმართულებითაც გინდათ რომ დაიწყოთ მუშაობა ჩვენთან. და რა ვიცი, თუ გაქვთ რამე საბაზისო ცოდნა, გამოგვიგზავნეთ CV და HR-ის მეილზე ვიყავთ, hr@sweeftdigital.com-ზე. შეგიძლიათ ეიფსაც გავგზავნოთ. დიდი მადლობა. Abe, thank you very much. Shota, მადლობა. ნახვამდის.